Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong. And joining me this week on the podcast is a gentleman that I actually met working on an event. And we kind of were both working this event. I was emceeing a fundraiser for the Arthritis Foundation of Hawaii. And this guy was taking the most amazing pictures, but also the most fun photographer I've ever seen. Like just like having a blast, getting everyone to just have big, genuine smiles. And I got to talk a little bit with him. And I was like, man, you've got a really interesting life. I need to have you on the podcast. So thankfully, he said yes. And he is not only an amazing professional photographer, but he is also a business owner as well. He owns Bowman Digital Media. And we're going to talk all about his fascinating life and background. But I can't wait to have him on here. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Ira Bowman. Hey, Ira.
Hello, Nolan. Thank you for having me on the show, brother. And yeah, in Hawaii, so I live in LA. We don't really do the shaka out here. So one of the things during that event, as I was trying to get people to throw me the shaka, and it was funny because they're looking at it, who's this white guy asking me to, you know what I mean? But we had a good time for sure.
So that's the first question I was going to ask is because I know that you're based out of LA, yet this event that we were working on together was in Hawaii at the Aloha Tower
Yeah.
Marketplace. How did you get involved in that? You came all the way from LA to cover this event.
Yeah, it's funny. So, Dr. Marchand is the one that was the director of the Arthritis Foundation for Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew her before she moved out there. So she was very familiar with my work. And when she first asked me if I'd be interested in doing it, I was like, "Are you sure?" There's got to be incredible photographers in Hawaii. You don't necessarily need to fly somebody in. But the reason why she wanted me was not just my work. Actually, they wanted help with the marketing of the event. So the
Ah,
social media and the SEO and, doing press releases and things like that. My company does all those things. So Marshawn was like,
okay.
hey, because we had a 3-year break with COVID, we don't know if we're going to get enough attention in the press and just get enough local support. And they were looking for some bigger sponsors, donors. And so that's
Mm,
why she brought me in. And then when she got the work, I actually did it 2 years. So the
yeah.
first year I did it, and they got the package from me with all the photos and the videos that I did. She was like, oh man, we definitely got to have you again. So they brought me out the second year. But
Yeah.
since then, just kind of a little bit of news, she's actually resigned from that position.
I know. I just got the
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, she's taking another role, so I don't know that I'll be back out a third year just because the person who's running it doesn't have that same connection to me anymore. But we'll see. But I
Yeah.
really enjoyed
Cross
it.
my
I
fingers.
loved my time. But photography work. Here's one of my cameras actually right here. So like this is so fun for me. I love. It's not the only thing we do, but this stuff takes me everywhere. So it takes me across the globe, and I get to go to a lot of amazing places and shoot a lot of fun photos for different organizations. But I'm a corporate photographer, so I do a lot of work for brands and businesses, not so much like weddings and you know uh, family reunions and things like that.
Right, right.
So it's mostly corporate stuff.
That's what really stood out to me about my experience of getting to quote unquote work with you because I got to see just how much genuine joy you had in capturing the photos of, and these are people who are, families and groups of people that are walking for a good cause. But I mean, it's hot in the
It was
day, and
hot.
they're
Yeah, yeah.
walking around in circles. So,
They're all
uh,
sweaty and
yeah,
like
and
take
you're
camera
like
out of my face.
carrying all this equipment, and I was like in the nice shade, cooled area, and I'm like, oh man, Ira must be dying. But for the whole like couple hours, you're just like it's as if from hour one to hour three, the no difference in energy. Like you just look like you're having such a good time. And then when I saw the photos that you captured, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes total sense that everyone you captured is like got this genuine joy on their face because they resonate, with the joy that you take in taking these photos. So I definitely see how when you said that this is something that just like brings you so much joy, I totally got to witness that.
Yeah, I developed that persona over time. It wasn't something that I actually had at first because, there's a lot of pressure to get good shots.
Yeah.
So, what I learned though over time, over the years of doing this, is that, the more comfortable I am and they see it, then the more
Hmm.
comfortable usually they are. And I get that comment from so many people after we do work. Like, even if I'm doing like a magazine cover shoot or I'm doing a VIP red carpet event, something like that. Most of those photographers are a little bit intense, and I'm so relaxed and so just like trying to get people comfortable that usually not everybody, but most people really like that experience. So I do get hired a lot because of my personality. So thank you for noticing.
Yeah, no, and I think that that is such a key element to the success of getting that photo, that image that you're getting, because I've seen it where you're supposed to, as the person getting the picture taken of, you're supposed to look like you're having a good time, but when you have the person taking the photo looking miserable and or upset or stressed, it's like
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable smiling in your face right now.
Yeah. If somebody looks like they are about to, like, I don't
Yeah.
know, injure somebody, right? Like I see photographers out there in the field, especially like we call it the crush. So, when I'm doing like a red carpet event and there's 40 photographers and we're all trying to get the perfect shot and it's pretty competitive, but you can see it on a lot of their faces. Like it doesn't look like they're having fun at all.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll get people that are in front of them looking over at me because I got a smile on my face. And so I get a lot of direct eye contact in the lens, which is helpful.
So I'm excited to talk to you more about your, adventures and experiences and doing stuff like red carpets. But I wanted to find out first, like you have this business
Yeah.
and you also have this passion for photography. Is what came first? Was the photography what led to you creating this digital media business, or
Yeah,
was it
no.
the other way around?
Yeah, it was definitely the opposite. When I was in high school, my first experience with a camera was not taking photos, is actually with video work. So I was in the marching band and I was the drum. Well, they didn't call it drum, they called it percussion, but the percussion section leader. And so for marching band, I had to train the newer, so I did it for 2 years. I was a junior and senior year in high school. I had, the section leader spot. And so it was my responsibility to make sure that people not only were playing correctly and holding the sticks correctly, but also they were marching correctly. And one of the things that I figured out was if I take my RCA camera, imagine this big old, the technology back in the early 90s, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
wasn't very small. But anyways, I would set it up and it was the full size tapes and I would record it. And then later what I would do is I would cut it up and I would show people like their mistakes, and not to embarrass them, but just so they were aware of it. And then they didn't feel like I was picking on them. They could actually see like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'm out of time. And because I'm out of time, now these formations don't look right. Well, we started to win, not as the overall band, but we started to win the percussion sections in these competitions. Well, my band director noticed the improvement and he said, hey, will you uh, help us as the whole band the same way you're doing for the percussion section? And I'm like, well, yeah, I will, but I'm not going to do it for free. You got to pay me because this is a lot of work. So anyway, he's like, well, let's see what we could do. So we worked it out, and that was my start. But for 20 years, I was actually in the technology space selling print related things. So I got
Oh,
into graphic design. So first it was videography, then it was graphic design, and I learned how to create logos and do stuff. We were doing things like if you ever go to Vegas, that's really where this started for me. So it was like wallpaper designs, vehicle wraps, doing barricade graphics, floor graphics, stuff for wraps. In fact, it got to the point where we started wrapping the sides of casinos, the hotels
no way.
themselves.
Wow.
So that's where really the digital media for me kind of became a passion. And it was in the graphic design. The photography work came from that. I started to get a little bit of a reputation in Vegas for artists. They would create their master art. And instead of selling the master, one and done. Instead, what they would do is they would come to us and go, hey, we want to reproduce the master, one of 500 or 250 or whatever, and sell that. Now they retain the master and they could come back and do it again. We were doing what was called direct substrate printing. So imagine printing directly on metal or plastic or wood or anything that's hard. We could do that. So sometimes these masters though were very valuable. They'd be worth like, 25 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand. And
Dang.
the scan job, so we needed an electronic version, right? You can't print
Mm-hmm.
from a hard copy. You've got to scan it somehow and get that image. Well, the scanning itself was relatively expensive, say a couple $100.
Mm-hmm.
But my boss looked at me and goes, well, wait a minute. You want me to take something that's $25,000, $50,000, $100,000, run it through a scanner for $300 so we could get like a $4,000 print job? He's like, look, the liability there, the risk there isn't worth it.
Right.
And so we kind of thought that the idea wasn't going to work. But then I came up with the idea, well, I could take a picture. I could take a photo of it. So then I started to use the camera for real for that. And I grew my reputation in town. It became one of those things in Vegas. Like if you needed that kind of work, the artists were telling each other, you need to go
Oh,
see
wow.
Ira over at Arc. So that's where I really got started with the camera. And that was about 15 years ago.
Oh,
So
wow.
the graphic design is about 20 years old, and the photography work started about 15 years ago.
Do you have a favorite piece of art that you got to work with in that particular service that you kind of keep in your memories? Like, oh yeah, this was a really cool thing. I got to.
There was a few of them. The most unique thing that they ever did was there's a pool in Vegas, is a nightclub, and so they have DJs at night, and everybody's around the pool. They're not in the pool. But one time we were looking at the environment, and when they were asking me, hey, what kind of cool crazy crap can we do? We have some extra money to throw at this because people spend a lot of money to go to these pool parties in Vegas at night. It's insane what they spend, especially for the bottles of alcohol. So, anyways, I'm like, well, yeah, we've got this new material. We can float it on the top of the water, and then we've got this other material that we can submerge. You don't have to drain the pool. We can do what's called a wet install. And so
Whoa.
we created little sharks for the bottom of the pool, so it looked like
Uh
there were
huh.
sharks swimming. They were not moving, but they were, what I mean.
Okay.
But then we had lily pad stuff up the top. But instead of just having like floating plants like everybody else would do, we actually could brand it. So we had the logos of the nightclub, the logos of the DJ, any of their
Wow.
sponsors, and just floating on the surface. So that was kind of fun.
That's
Um,
so cool.
yeah. But Vegas gave me the opportunity to do just about everything you can think of, every surface. So one of the places that I really enjoyed working was the Caesar's Forums at Caesar's Palace. It's
Hmm.
actually, I don't know if it still is, but at the time it was run by Simon Properties out of Indianapolis, Indiana. But you know they had the Caesar's Forum shops in Vegas, so we did floor runners for them. We did they call them facades, but basically imagine this. There's a shop in the mall that's changing out, right? Like it
Hmm.
was this, now it's going to be that. So what they would make us do is they would make us create the barricade wrap had to be printed and installed the same day, but you only had from the time they closed to the time they opened. So we were working late hours.
Wow.
One of the things that I came up with, which they ended up using, they used to set up the plywood panels. So they would have a construction team erect the panels. Then we would come in and we had to wrap the facade.
Right.
And that's a lot of work in a little time. And if anything goes wrong, now it's your reputation. So what we
Yeah.
started doing instead was printing directly on the plywood. We could take the plywood,
Oh,
print on the face. As soon as they erected it, now it was
it's
done.
already there.
No,
Wow.
no more pressure.
Yeah.
So that's when it sticks out.
Dang, that's so cool. It's so interesting the innovations that you can come up with when you have that sense of creativity. Is that kind of what was going on for you, like growing up and in school, like always being creative?
Yeah, I was. Well, I'm kind of an anomaly because I'm a nerd. I love to read. I'm good at math, but I'm also very creative. I've always been like, I was in drama, I was in choir, I was in band, right? So I've always, what's funny is I can't draw to save my life. So if you give me a pen and a piece of paper and say, sketch me something, it's going to look like actually, I need to be careful the way I say this, because my kids, I have 8 children. I think you
Oh my
remember that,
gosh.
but yeah, the audience
Right.
doesn't know that, but I have 8 kids. So at the time, I said this like 4 or 5 years ago, and my 9-year-old was either 4 or 5. But anyways, I said, yeah, I draw like a 5-year-old. And then I was looking at my little daughter. Her name is Debbie. And Debbie, now she can draw. My wife is an amazing artist. She can draw and paint. And she got those skills from mama. So I was looking at her when I said that, and I go, wait a minute. I can't even draw as good as her. She's
Yeah.
better than me. Now you put me on a computer, and all of a sudden I can play, right?
Yeah.
So it just, I'm not good with the hand, but yeah, always creative from an early age. But I that's what I love about what I did. I loved it about the print business. I love it about what we do now. Mainly what I was good at was, I'm a systems based thinker, so I can see like, okay, here's a problem and then solve the puzzle. But then also because of creativity, like I could come up with solutions that were fun and effective.
Hmm.
And I'm budget friendly because of that whole systems based thinking. So it's like, for example, just in the story I just told you about, the facades going up. The original barrier to entry for people doing that was they thought it would be too expensive, because direct substrate printing like that, printing on hard materials, is more expensive than printing on a vinyl printer, or anything where they're doing adhesive vinyl and
Yeah.
then the installation. But the problem again was time. However, when I first took that solution over to Simon Properties representative and said, hey, we want to do it this way instead, they're like, okay, but what's the cost difference? And actually, because of the labor savings, because you're
Mm.
not talking about Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, you got to find somebody third shift willing to come
Yeah.
in. They don't always show up because, I mean, in reality, let's just face it, it's Vegas and people are doing some things, right? And they don't always feel like they're ready to go to work then when they're supposed to. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
that does happen. So we actually were able to get it done for the same budget. It didn't cost any more, but it certainly helped with the time and alleviated that pressure. And for our company, it was better because we were under contract. If we didn't deliver in time, there was a financial penalty.
Oh, wow.
So then we took away our liability.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of like how it all comes together. But my 2 careers in the graphics and print space, and then now in the digital media space, it's the same thing. Like, I'm trying to help owners where they are, figure out where they're trying to go, and then create a system that helps them get there. And the photos and videos are certainly a big part of it, but SEO is actually the thing I specialize in, which, again, that's the other part of my brain. That's the part of the systematic thinking
Yeah.
brain.
Right.
But really, people don't understand. Most people don't understand how important it is to rank high on Google. So when I'm talking to an owner and I'm asking them about their revenue and their sales, a lot of the times they're like, "Well, we get it from word of mouth or we get it from referrals," and I'm like, "Well, that's great, but how much are you getting from Google? Because there's a lot of traffic on Google." And usually, the honest answer is, "I have no idea."
Yeah.
So then I have to go do a little research and figure out, okay, well, you got like 6 people visiting your website every 30 days. Let's figure out a way to get that up. So all of it comes together. The photography, the graphic design, the SEO, we do, video work for them, but it all comes together to increase their visibility. So the one thing that I've had my whole career, the common thread through it all, is just increasing visibility.
And I gotta imagine that because of the way technology is constantly evolving, that it feeds this creative vehicle that you have. That even though you create systems and solutions and stuff, it's really neat because every time there's a new technology, like that changes
Absolutely.
the whole game for you, right?
Yeah, ChatGPT and Bard is the newest thing, right? Like, everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon, and I'm like, yeah, but you still have to figure out, intelligent ways to incorporate the artificial intelligence. It seems like you wouldn't have to do that because artificial intelligence would do it for you. But I'm like, well, no, and again, with liability, this is the thing with that, right? It's like, if you're allowing AI to communicate on your behalf, you sure as heck better make sure that it's communicating accurately. And
Right,
the
right.
limiting factor with ChatGPT, in case anybody watching this is not familiar, with that technology is it draws from a database that's fixed, and it came from September of 2021. So if you have people asking about things outside of that date range, it doesn't have access to it. Now that's an
Mm.
advantage of Bard. That's one of the differences. So Bard is Google's version of ChatGPT, but Bard actually does have access to the internet, so it can pull live data. But if most of the plugins and the things that are out there right now are not Bard based, they're ChatGPT based. So yeah,
And how does it
technology
know?
is
Like,
amazing, but sometimes there are challenges that come up. You just
yeah,
have to understand the whole scope.
yeah. I think it's like the idea of like there's tons of tools out there, but you still have to know how to use them right. Otherwise,
Yeah.
they don't either work or you use them wrong and it could be damaging, right?
No, 100%. And that's what's cool. As my business has grown, we got 32 people working for us now. And
Dang.
yeah, it's growing nice. We launched in 2020. I pretty much worked all by myself for the first year, and then I realized how dumb that was. So 2021, I started adding more, and then I realized that I don't have to have them all as W-2s. I can have 1099. So then I started stacking them even more. But what we've done for that is there's redundancies. So different teams are checking different things to make sure that we're all doing what's best for the client.
So you essentially started this whole thing during the pandemic then.
Oh yeah. So
Was it because of the pandemic that you
yeah,
decided this?
100%, 100%.
Wow.
So I was living in San Francisco Bay Area, and
Hmm.
I took a job. Now I'm interesting. This interesting maybe for a variety of reasons, but one of the things that's interesting about me is I actually have worked for the same company. So in other words, the last one I worked for was ARC, okay, ARC.
Hmm.
I worked for them in Las Vegas. That's where I was doing the cool stuff with the DJs and the Simon Properties and all that stuff, right? Well,
Yeah.
then I changed companies. I graduated college, so I went to work for another company out
Hmm.
in Texas as a manager instead of as a account executive, just a sole producer.
Hmm.
So, anyways, then when I left them, I went back to work for a company I'd worked with before ARC out in California. So that brought me back to the Bay Area. Well, after a couple of years, that owner decided he was going to sell. So I'm like, I'm going to get out before that happens. So I contacted the people at ARC and said, hey, do you have an opening? And they're like, yeah, we've got an opening down in LA. So I moved down to LA, but I've worked for 5 different companies 2 times each,
Wow.
which, says something that they keep willing to hire me back. Right. But,
Yeah.
I moved down here in January of 2020. By May of 2020, the economy had been adversely affected so bad because I was working in the hospitality and event space primarily,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
right? So the events in LA, everything was shut down because we became
Right.
one of the. I know New York was really bad. It was considered the epicenter of the pandemic in the United States for a while, but LA actually passed them after New York started to calm down. There was nothing happening, so
Mm.
they laid me off. Well, we had just moved 5 months before that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I already told you I had 8 kids, right? I've been married 23 years. Well, one of the reasons why I'm still married is because I didn't make a move again after 5 months. So like, what can I do? What can I do that I can use my talents, help people out, and not have to move? My solution was Bowman Digital Media. Because up until that point, I had always been an employee or a manager. I'd never been an owner.
Yeah.
Never had my name on a shingle before.
How how was it received by your family when you said, "Hey, no, the world is upside down right now. I'm going to start my own business."
Well, it's crazy because at first, of course, they're like, "What do you mean? You just got to go find a job." I mean,
Yeah,
everybody.
right,
And
right.
and I think I'm actually writing several books right now. But one of the books I talk about this a little bit. You just have to know, and I didn't know this, so it actually did hurt my feelings. I'm just gonna be completely transparent, right? It hurt my feelings, but the fact is, my family has known me for so long as
Hmm.
a print guy, a sales guy, a social media guy, yes, but never a business owner. So when I said, hey, I'm going to switch and go into this place, yeah, I didn't get the support but I think that that's not a personal slight. What I've
Right.
learned through this is it just takes people who know you a long time, who know you a certain way, to see you in a different light.
Mm-hmm.
And because, of course, at that time, again, with all those mouths to feed, like, hey, can you even do this? Are you going to
Yeah.
be able to make it? Now, my family came around relatively quickly because I not only made it, I was started to make more money than I'd ever made before. So
Wow.
now, if you ask them, yeah, they're all on board. And I've done TED Talks, and I've done, I have my photos featured in Forbes magazine this month.
Wow.
So, there's been over the 3 years, there's been some pretty impressive highlights. My TED Talk on SEO actually has been seen by over 100,000 people. It's only been out for a month.
That's
And so,
incredible.
yeah, I've gotten a pretty good reputation already for this.
So how did you, I mean, you admitted that it hurt your feelings. Like
Yeah.
for a lot of people in that position, that could be kind of the thing that tells them maybe this is not the right idea because I don't even have like the belief in, the people who are closest to me to think I can do this. Like, what was it that made you go, nah, I'm still going to pursue this and have that drive to continue on with this idea?
Okay. It's kind of a funny story. The day I got laid off was a Friday. Now, I
Okay.
had never been laid off in my life. I wasn't even familiar with what that term actually meant. I had to ask for clarification. Okay. But my
How did they
friend,
tell you?
they called me over the phone. I'm going to tell you this
Oh,
story. I'm actually going to tell you the story right now. It'd take
wow.
like 60 seconds. But anyways, my friend and I, Joe Stepke, had a standing Zoom call date, if you will, because we're
Hmm.
like best friends. So every day at 5 on Friday, we would call each other and we would just chit chat. In fact, we ended up making a show out of it called Cup of Joe. So it was Friday Night Cup of Joe with Ira and Joe Stepke. Anyways, but before that happened, we would do that was our thing. So I get a call at 5:30 in the afternoon from my boss. Now I had just earlier that day had a meeting with the county of Riverside. The county of Riverside had just given me a verbal purchase order for over $100,000. Now, that was the largest order that I had secured in my short tenure there, 5 months.
Hmm.
So I thought my boss was calling me when I saw the cell phone ring. I thought he's just calling to congratulate me. We're
Right.
using Salesforce as a CRM, and I put it in the notes. And so, he had access. Obviously, that went really well. I was expecting the purchase order in paper on that Monday. So I'm like, Joe, just give me 30 seconds. We're on this
Yeah.
call. I'm like, just give me 30 seconds. My boss is calling to congratulate me. Anyways, he lays me off in that call instead. So I'm like, I was thunderstruck. But Joe Stepke is known as Joe the Finance Guy. So if you go to joethefinanceguy.com, you'll see his website. But he had been asking me because I was learning web development from 2018, and so now it's 2020. So I've been doing it
Hmm.
for a couple of years. So he had been asking me for a while, hey, will you rebuild my website because my website sucks? And my answer to him always was this: I don't have the time, Joe, because
Right.
I'm
Right.
working this new job. I'm trying to get more of those purchase orders. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the first thing out of Joe's mouth, first of all, he did not hang up. He stayed and listened to the
Oh,
whole thing.
wow.
But he was on Zoom. My boss was on cell phone. So my boss didn't know he was there, and he was on mute, so it
Yeah.
wasn't making any noise. But anyways, he stayed there the whole time. And he told me later, he's like, man, I felt so bad for you. I didn't know what to do. And I'm like, honestly, I get it. I don't know that I would have known what to do either, right? But I probably would have hung up. Anyways, whatever. The first thing out of Joe's mouth wasn't, hey, man, how are you? I'm so sorry. Nothing like that. Joe Stepke's first words out of his mouth were, so, you got some time to build my website now? I'm like, yeah, I do. But to answer your question directly, what gave me the confidence? I was like, look, I had at that point 150,000 followers on LinkedIn already. So I'm like, enough people know me. They know my skill set. They know the quality of my work. All I need to do is put the word out that I'm available fractionally to do some of their marketing services. And I know that I'll be able to do this. I had confidence in myself. And the thing, I think what makes me different from a lot of people in that situation, you have to remember I had 20 years of sales experience.
Hmm.
So I knew how to take no interest and turn it into an order. And with that and my skill set, which I do a pretty good job. So with that, I believed in myself, and
Yeah.
I have to pay the bills for the family, right? I mean, now
Right.
now I'm at the point where it's a little bit easier because I have a reputation and a portfolio that's 3.5 years old. But at that time, I spent the first month basically making, I don't know if you're familiar with the term GIF, but if you ever see like a logo move and blink and stuff
Right.
like that, I spent the first 30 days basically making 40 of those things. Every company that was connected to me, I'm like, hey, let me GIF out your logo. I was only charging $100.
Wow.
But that and a few other orders that came in, I made $6,300 my first month. Now, that may not sound like, a big amount for people, but trust me, I turned a profit my first month and I didn't have to borrow any money.
Yeah.
I was able to launch my business using some of the money that I already had in the bank. I'll tell you, I had $12,000. That's it. Because we had
Dang.
just spent all the money that we had on the new house down
Yeah,
payment.
moving, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't have to pay PMI and all that stuff and the moving and new furniture and things like that. So yeah, so all our cash we had pretty much used up during the move, not knowing that when I came down here, the idea was the guy that I replaced was somebody I knew when I worked in Vegas. He was retiring. Well, he had been
Oh.
in that chair for 20 years. Our agreement was before I decided to come down was that I basically was going to fill his chair and just make sure all his clients, existing clients, were happy. They weren't
Mm.
really looking for me to add new things. They were looking for
Yeah.
me to maintain what they already had built. So there was no way when I came down here, I thought that in 5 months I would be out of a job. I mean, no way. I wouldn't have done that. Who would?
What was there? I mean, if you're okay with saying, like, was
Yeah.
there a reason? Was it just because the economy was so bad because of the fear of what was going
Well,
on?
they shut down. They were the largest
Oh.
reprographics company in the world at the time. I believe they still are, but at the time they had almost 250 locations worldwide.
Oh.
And because
Wow.
their sales were off so much, and once
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember the PPP plan, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
the PPP plan was helping to prop up businesses during that time, but that
Right.
was the month that they turned it off.
Oh, wow.
So then to stay afloat, to stay viable, they had to
Yeah.
do some drastic things, and they were shutting
Mm.
down facilities and they were laying people off. Now, I didn't come cheap, and this was probably the reason why they selected me, right? A, I
Yeah.
was one of the newest people on their team, and B, I had a hefty salary because I
Hmm.
got to feed the 8 kids. So actually, in that, Nolan, that was in my mind. Actually, the reasoning behind why I knew this was actually the better method for me than trying to find another job,
Yeah.
because I said, okay, there's a veneer here that a lot of people subscribe to. The job is secure as long as I do a good job. I promise you, I was doing a good job, right? But it
Hmm.
still got taken away from me anyways.
Yeah.
Circumstances out of my control. And I wasn't mad at them. I get it, right? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I wouldn't have said their name if I harbored ill will for them. In fact, I called them up for a print job for Marshawn while I was in Hawaii so they could do the work, right? Like I'm still pro ARC. Like I have friends that work there. I like them, right? But what I decided at that moment was I was never going to let any one person control all of my income ever again.
Hmm.
So I used the term earlier, fractional marketing. And what that means is I set up my income like spokes in a wheel. So I have 6 services that my company offers. We offer SEO, website development, graphic design, photography, videography, and I'm forgetting one. Anyways, I'll come. I'll come
It's
back to it.
okay. You got enough to to remember.
Social media management. That's
Oh,
the other
okay.
one. Okay. So, but why did I do that? Because if any one of those services ever become non-viable, technology changes, AI comes
Hmm.
out. Now it's something that you used to need to pay somebody to do. Now a robot can do it for you. Okay, great. I never wanted to lose all my income, but then also, this is the this is part of that systematic brain that I was talking about earlier. I said I'm never going to have more than 25% of my income coming from any one client. So
Mm.
I can lose clients, but I never lose all my money. So I was insulated in 2 ways: the variety of the services, and then also in the not allowing any one client to own 100% of my income, because then they can lord it over you, right?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, you can't talk to me that way. You can't treat me that way. You can't take that day off. You can't go with your kid to the play because you got to work. Because if you don't, I'm going to cut you off. Like, well, okay, do it. But I have
Yeah.
now, about 40 clients in full disclosure. So I have about 40 clients. So any one of them leaves, we want to know why. We want to do what we can to help them, but it isn't gonna kill us. And
Yeah.
so that's where it was not comfortable with my wife specifically in the beginning because she was definitely like, "Hey, buddy, you need to go
Yeah.
do what you do, and you're good at that." Like she wasn't trying to tell me I'm not good at it. She was like, "This is you've done this for so long, and we know this is what we know can trust."
Right.
But again, she came around relatively quickly. Once she saw the math was like, I started to break $10,000 in billings every month, and she saw it. And she's like, "Okay, I can get with this."
And I can also imagine her being an artist that she can also grasp the idea of creating,
Oh yeah.
something like this.
Well, she's
Right.
always she's always supported my creative endeavors, right? It was always just for she we okay, you're in Hawaii, they actually have turtles. It's funny out here because we say it and people are like, "What do you mean?" Like, but what she says is like the turtle, you know how they like go into their shell and
Right.
and they've got that self-defense. It's like that's the thing that happens to my wife. My wife is
Mm.
less of a risk taker.
Yeah.
She doesn't like to gamble. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? My wife likes the sure thing. So, the risk reward sometimes is higher when you take a risk, but sometimes the risk doesn't pan out. So I could have totally bombed and failed, but I didn't. Thank God for that. But um, anyways, I had confidence in myself. I knew
Yeah.
what I could do. And again, the thing that gave me the confidence the most was the reach that I had, organic reach. So one of the things when you're a new business owner, you have to typically spend some money and advertise, whether that's PPC ads or billboards, traditional advertising. But whether it's digital or traditional, typically you have to spend some money to get the word out, who you are and what you do, because nobody knows you exist. But I had
Hmm.
this wonderful platform on LinkedIn with those 150,000 followers. I was able to make posts, and my posts at the time were being seen by 1 million people. Now they've tightened up the algorithm. LinkedIn is trying hard to mess itself up all the time. So my
Right.
posts don't get seen by 1 million people anymore on LinkedIn. But my LinkedIn following has grown. But now since I've been doing this full time, I have 140,000 followers on or subscribers on Instagram and 23,000 on YouTube, and then I think my Twitter is somewhere near 10. But I've got pretty much a big following on multiple platforms. So again, that idea of don't let any one platform control all your
Hmm.
income. So, and that's actually where I started to really learn SEO too. Was I launched a philanthropy in 2018, so I did it for that. But then with my business, I said, okay, I need to diverge away from social media. And I actually was, this is something I had wrong. In my mind, I thought that social media and Google search engine traffic were basically about the same volumes
Mm.
because they're both in the billions. But it's actually there's a huge discrepancy. Google has 7 billion searches per day on it.
Hmm.
Well, social media has 4.5 billion monthly active users, and that's the whole thing combined. So you're looking at like 200 billion to just under 5 billion. That's the spread. It's a
Yeah.
huge discrepancy. So when I started to focus on Google, and at the same time I was building out my team, what happened was my business started to grow really fast.
Wow.
So anyways, that's kind of the genesis of how it all happened and how we grew. We just figured out not to put all our eggs in one basket and then to focus on the baskets that had the larger volume. So I still don't send out emails, and I know everybody in the audience is going amen because you're tired of getting spam. We don't send out any spam emails. In fact, sometimes people email me and I don't send a response only because in my mind I read it, I shook my head and I kept going. But if you send me an email, there's about a 50-50 chance that I'll respond. But I don't send out any, like, I don't have a spam department.
So, being that you spend a lot of your attention and uh, I guess business, so to speak, on social media, like how do you feel about social media for your children? Because you
Yeah, I
and
mean,
what is the age range of your children, by the way?
so 23 to 9. So
Dang.
yeah, I got married when I was 23 and we started right away. So there you
Did you
go.
always want to have a large family? Like,
You're gonna laugh, Nolan, but I'm a product of parents that have been divorced multiple times each. So I
wow.
didn't, growing up, I actually didn't even want to get married. I never thought that I would be married, have kids, or any of this stuff. In fact, when I was 17 years old, my dad recorded me. Remember that video
Yeah,
camera?
yeah.
We were at Yosemite, which is in, north central California. We were at Yosemite, and I was in a river with my brother, and I said this statement on video: I'm never getting married. I'm never having kids. I'm never getting fat. I'm never growing old. And anyways, all of those things pretty much I had done before, I was 30. Like, I was married at 23. I started to gain weight. I had the kids right away. The only thing I had to wait for was the growing old. Oh, and the other thing, I mean, this is probably the funniest one, right? I was never going bald. And you can see how that worked out for me. So,
So you're like the opposite of manifestation. Like,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
whatever you don't want, you'll get.
I had a big mouth, and God has a sense of humor. So there you go. Well, now what's funny is my wife's parents just celebrated 57 years of marriage.
Dang.
So, she's one of six, and she's actually the baby of the family. She's the youngest. So she wanted, well, I don't know if she really wanted it, but like in her mind, she wanted 12 kids as a kid. If you had asked her when she was a kid, what did she want to do for a living? She'd tell you she wanted to be a housewife.
Mm.
So I married a lady who is extremely talented. She can sew, she can cook. When we bought this house, we found out that there was mold in the house.
Oh, wow.
And one of our kids actually got really sick, which we probably won't need to talk about because that'll take up too much time. But she got really sick, and we needed to get the mold out of the house. So we didn't have the money again. We had the limited funds. So it's like, okay, what are we going to do? Well, my wife YouTube things and talk to contractors, talk to the material suppliers. Anyway, she figured out she's done most of the work herself. And what's funny is when
Wow.
people come in to inspect it, like we have plumbers and electricians, she doesn't do that stuff. We hire that stuff out, right? When these guys come in and see it, they're flabbergasted. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like you did an amazing job." She's just an extremely talented person. So I was lucky. That's why I wanted to have so many kids. First of all, she's a knockout. She's very good looking. I don't watch enough TV, and there you go. Eight is enough is the thing. Is this expression?
So how did you go from like going from this belief of never getting married? What was it about it when you met her that you're able to just go, all right, I'm going to flip my whole belief system upside down and
Yeah. Well, I kind of changed my mind in college, but
mm,
I was with a person before I met my wife. It's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I'll say it because it's real. I had a drunken stupor, an extended drunken stupor with a girl. She actually ended up getting pregnant, but before we knew she was pregnant, we broke up. So at that point, I had met my future wife, who was at the time just my girlfriend, but then she was with me the moment I got the call. Like, hey, you're going to
oh
be a
wow.
dad. Well, now I was raised in a different generation. I was raised in an era where you get a girl pregnant, you got to marry her.
Yeah.
So I broke up with my girlfriend, who I was crazy about, broke her heart, broke my heart, and said, all right, this girl that I called her and said, okay, we got to get together. And so we tried. We didn't even make it another week. It
Wow.
just, when we were sober, it didn't work, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
anyways, I called my now ex-girlfriend, who's my wife, right? I call her
Right,
up, and
right.
I'm groveling. I just got to get in the same room with her. Well, eventually, like a month later, we ended up getting back together. And so at that point, we had been through so many emotions so fast.
Mm,
I just told her, because she was like, okay, well, are you going to be with me for a minute? Or are you going to be with me
yeah.
forever? And I'm like, no, I'm serious. This is for everything for me. So I didn't have like this grand, ring proposal thing. I'm embarrassed about that I don't have that story now, because everybody asks, like, tell us about when you got engaged. Like, we literally were on a couch in my apartment and just having a conversation about what our life was going to be like. But we got married 11 months after we met. So
Wow.
the 8 kids, the first one, my first biological child is not my wife's biological child. But when I tell you she's his mom, she has been there every step of the way. She's known him as long as I have, right? So
Wow.
we have 7 kids together my wife
Hmm.
and I naturally, and then the one who is older. But um, that's how we got together. It was a
That's
whirlwind.
incredible.
But the whole thing, like made me like commit
Yeah.
to it, right? And so 23 years later, we're still together. What's funny is at our wedding, because what I didn't tell you is we met at a bar, right?
I
I
see a
used
common theme here with you and
Yeah,
your
well,
relationships.
I changed my ways as I got older,
Yeah. Yeah.
but at the time, right, I'm 22, 23. I was working as a waiter at a place called the Elephant Bar, but I wasn't a bartender. I was just a waiter at this restaurant. So after the shift was over, because I always did the closing. My friend and I, who was actually my roommate, would go to this place called Murphy's, and we would just unwind. Like, we weren't there to pick up chicks. We were playing pool, drinking beer, and then go home and go to sleep. So my wife comes in that night. Now, again, we didn't know each other from Adam, but we started talking. And as it turns out, I was in a fraternity in college. And she went to high school with a few of the guys that I was in the fraternity with. So we had something to talk about. Well, anyways, we ended up dancing that night and driving to the beach and, you know, anyways, getting to know each other a little bit at the beach.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the second date, she actually, I thought she was standing me up. So I was like ready to write her off. But anyways, we went from that to 11 months later, walking down the aisle, and there was people openly in our wedding saying, yeah, they're not going to make it 5 years, right? Like, take that bet.
Right.
I wish I could go back and collect on all those things.
Yeah. Guarantee, even especially with the over under on children, you could have collected a ton too.
Yeah, yeah. Everything about it has been a shock, but it's been
So,
good. I've been blessed. I have nothing to complain about.
so your youngest is 9, so probably in about probably 9 more years, the last will leave the home.
Yeah,
Your whole existence with your wife has been with children.
yeah,
Do you have kind of, I mean, 9 years is going to come up pretty quickly, I think.
yeah.
So
It moves
do you
fast.
guys kind of have any ideas of like what you imagine life is going to be like in
I could
that
tell you,
transition?
exactly what it's gonna be like.
Okay.
So I love photography, right?
Uh-huh.
So what we're gonna do, we live here in Southern California, which is wonderful in the winter. We don't have winter like most people have winter, much like Hawaii, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
guys can understand. But our summer here is brutal. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna have our home, and then we're gonna get a travel RV, a nice one. My wife goes luxury a little bit. But for 6 months out of the year, we're gonna just tour around the country, and I'm gonna take photos, and the photos actually will help support,
Yep.
that lifestyle. And we're gonna go visit the kids because the one bad part about living here really is just real estate is so expensive. So the
Right.
odds that all 8 of our kids are going to be able to settle down here in this area is not realistic. So we know people are going to move around, and so that'll give us our opportunity to go see them and hopefully our grandkids and that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's the plan.
That sounds like an incredible life. I'm jealous and excited for you. I know
Yeah, yeah, I
it's like
can't wait. I actually can't wait
that's a
for that.
great plan.
It's not like
Yeah.
you say, it's 9 years. It's not like it's forever. And then
Right.
I've got 9 years to keep my business growing so that I can support that lifestyle, which
Yeah.
I'm on track to do that. So
Well, I mentioned earlier in the beginning of our conversation, I wanted to hear, about some of your experiences, like you mentioned, like covering red carpets and stuff like
oh
that.
yeah,
So,
I'm doing
yeah,
the
like
Emmys. I'm doing the Emmys this year.
that's crazy. So how did you get involved with that, with being a
Well,
part of the Emmys?
I got my press credential last year,
Hmm.
and so it's kind of funny. And this is true in life, pretty much. If people haven't figured this out, write this down. Who you know is just as important, if not more important, than what you know.
Hmm.
So you have seen me do event photography, so you kind of understand. But I'm here in LA, so I do event photography for people sometimes that are famous, right?
Right.
So they see me and they see the difference too. I
Gotcha.
mean, I stand out like a sore thumb when I'm at an event because it's definitely different than what you're probably used to with an event photographer.
Yeah.
So I'm not hiding in the background. I'm like all over the place, and I run around when I need to, and I'm doing it with a smile on my face, and you never let them see you sweat, kind of thing, right? So I did an event I actually could show you guys if you want me to share my screen. But anyways, I did a VIP event in. Oh my gosh, my brain just froze up on me. Hang on a second. I did a VIP event here in Southern California, and one of the ladies that was there is she's she's famous, but she's not like A-list famous, if that makes sense, right? So
Yeah,
she's more famous in the realm of authors.
gotcha.
So, and her name is Rhonda Swan. I can tell you who it is, right? So Rhonda Swan hires me to do her red carpet event, and they were doing a book signing at a Barnes and Nobles. Huntington Beach was the name of the town. I had like a
Oh,
brain,
okay.
I had a brain freeze for a second. But anyways, okay. So I'm in Huntington Beach, and I'm there doing this event. Well, at the event, one of the speakers that I was taking photos for happened to be going to another event the next weekend that I also was hired to do work for. So
Hmm.
we saw each other 2 weeks in a row. Well, through it, we became friends. We never had met before that. But through the 2 weeks, we kind of became like traveling buddies, right?
Right.
So, anyways, as it turns out, she goes, "Hey, I'm connected with this nonprofit that is sponsoring the Emmys has some of you might laugh at this, but they have an event before the Emmys where the celebrities go and get swag bags.
Okay, I've heard about
Okay,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So those swag bags, by the way, you want one if you can get it. There's a lot of really
Yeah.
good stuff. So she goes, "Hey, um, we are an exhibitor at that. Like we're buying a booth for that." And I go, that sounds interesting. How much is it? And she told me how much it was. I'm not going to say that because I don't want to embarrass anybody.
Right,
But
right.
anyways, so she told me, I said, hey, that's actually kind of interesting because that's a really high profile thing, the Emmys, right?
Right.
So I'm talking to her. And as I'm talking to her, she was asking, hey, can you get a couple photos of us maybe while you're there? And I'm like, sure, I can. I've got my press credential. I can shoot photos for anybody you want me to. And
Mhm.
she goes, I forgot that you had your press credential. I'm going to actually mention this to the lady that's organizing that you're part of the press. And I go, oh, okay. So I get an email from that person. And then that person connects me to the person who's in charge of the Emmys. Again, we call that the crush. But, the journalists that are invited to take photos and get the press pass in itself doesn't do anything but make you eligible. You still have
Okay.
to have a ticket or somebody still has to invite you, right? So it's not like I can
Okay.
go carte blanche and walk into any sporting event or any concert or anything like that. It doesn't work that way. You
Mhm.
typically, to just truth be told, and in full disclosure, how it all works, usually we go to will call before the event and we pick up our ticket just like everybody else does.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but anyways, it's the connection. So I did the event for Rhonda Swan. I met this lady by the name of Barbie Layton. Barbie Layton connects me to, the press contact at the one event, and then that person connects me on to the person at the Emmys, and that's my life. That's how it works.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so so every time I've seen like footage of, the red carpet and stuff, all I can kind of see the celebrity or whatnot standing in front of a step and repeat, and then I just hear all these voices like over here,
Yeah, it's click,
like
click, 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 click. That's why it's called
yeah,
the crush because it is. Look, it's dog eat dog. Nobody cares about you. They will step over you, on you. I actually have an advantage. It sounds funny. I have an advantage because I'm short. You would think it actually would be better if you're tall, but I can actually get between two people that are taller and shoot through them. But I played rugby in college. I was a wrestler all through high school. So if somebody wants to hip check me or whatever,
yeah.
like I'm pretty
That's
stout. I am pretty stout. So I hold my own. But again, with my facial expressions, I for whatever reason people do tend to look at me.
So, with all of those hundreds of photos being snapped of that one certain person at that one location, like what is I've never understood, like, what is the reasoning for having so many people taking that shot? Is it that they're hoping to have the most desirable one that they can sell to somebody, or is it
Well, it
because they've
depends.
been hired by somebody?
That depends. There's a couple ways. So I'm an independent journalist. So
Okay,
for me, when I'm taking the photos, they're for sale. Like
gotcha.
agencies out there who don't have a journalist at that event,
Mm-hmm.
might still want to cover that story, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
imagine Julia Roberts or whoever is your, celebrity, Brad Pitt or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a story that's running on the Emmys and you don't have any photos from that year, what are the odds that people are going to actually, consume it? Probably not as
Yeah.
well as if you have some current good photos. So the competition has some folks like me in there, but then there's also people like they work for ABC or Fox or whoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those photos aren't for sale, but that allows that agency, that news outlet, not to have to spend money on somebody like me because, that's a negotiation. There isn't just
Oh,
like a flat fee, like, hey, this shot's worth $200. Like, no, we're going to work it out.
wow.
So the quality of the shot matters because if it's a side profile and they're not looking at you, it's not worth nearly as much as if they're looking directly at you and you've got them just so, right? Like the stage is set.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we spend thousands and thousands of dollars on these lenses and also on the flash lights that we use too, the portable lights.
Wow. It's such a different world that, from the outside looking in, it looks so chaotic. But when you explain like that, it's like, wow, that there's even more to this
Well, think
than.
about, I mean, if you think about all the different outlets that there are, not just traditional media, there's thousands and thousands
Mm-hmm.
of online magazines and stuff. I write for one called Bellwether. So, Bellwether Magazine, I don't just take photos for them, I actually write for them too. Um, so, but you get paid as a journalist, you get paid for your work, especially when there's something that's really interesting, historical, or there's a celebrity involved. Those are the things that
Yeah.
you get paid for, right? So, but those bylines add up. When people say, "Okay, well, what have you done? Where have you been published?" And
Mm.
now my photos have been in Forbes. That's my most impressive byline, and that just happened. So it's on my media. It's on my media kit. So when people are looking up who's this Ira Bowman guy and why should I hire him, he's like, "Oh my gosh, he's been in
It's the guy
Forbes."
from Forbes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I've been on the TEDx stage. In fact, full disclosure, that's why I sought out to do a TEDx talk, just because that was a feather in my cap. And now I'm a
Oh.
best-selling author too. In fact, Bowman Digital Media started publishing books. Our first book
Oh.
gets published on Amazon actually very quickly, probably in the next 2 weeks. The first
Oh,
book.
cool.
Yeah,
What's
so
it
if
going
you
to be called?
search
What's it
Ira
called?
Bowman on Amazon, you'll see the books I was in. But if you
Yeah.
search Bowman Digital Media in August, you'll actually see the books that we're starting to publish.
Crazy. So are you publishing other people's books too that
Yeah,
they
I just
write?
got I just got
Wow.
hired to do one by an attorney out of Dallas. His name is James Gray Robinson, and so we're publishing his book. It'll probably be out in about 3 months.
That's a
So
very author like name. Like when you
yeah,
say
well,
that name, I'm like, sounds like an author. Yeah.
and this is who you know, right? So remember that Rhonda Swan hires me to be at the event, the first event, and I meet Barbie. Well, Barbie and I became good friends at the second event, but in between, they actually called me because James Gray Robinson happened to be at that event too, and that's where I met James Gray Robinson. So I meet him at the event, and they needed a 60-second promo video for their website. So I shot the video while I was at the second event.
Oh,
It was an extra order. But they
yeah.
were so happy with how it came out. He's like, "Hey, I want this guy to be part of our marketing team now." So when they came to me and said that they were looking to publish an ebook, I said, "Well, why don't we publish a hardback, a paperback, and an e-version? Why would we just have one?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "Well, cost." And I said, "Well, it doesn't cost any. It's the same cost. There's no extra money, right?" Right. So, anyways, they were fascinated that we were able to put that out like that and how fast. And I'm like, well, once you have the manuscript written, it just needs to go through editing. You've got to create the cover art. You got to find somebody to do the book forward. There are some details that have to be worked out, but it doesn't take a year or 2 years to do it. We can do it in 3 months.
The cool part is even for the cover art, I mean, that's something that you can do too, right? Like,
Yeah. Now, in full disclosure, I actually don't create the cover art. I do sometimes the rough draft, but I
right, right,
remember I said I have those 32 people working for me.
right. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
but
I
I
don't
mean
do
that,
I don't do all the creative anymore. I used to do everything, but pretty
but
much what I
having,
do, I do stuff like this. I'm the face of the business,
mhm.
and then I still do all the client consultations so I understand exactly what they want because it's my name on the shingle. So I've
Yeah.
got to make sure that they're happy. And then I still do all the photography work.
But everything comes from the top, right? So having someone like yourself that has that that creative
Yeah.
gift and vision,
Well,
that's what leaks out into all of the work that is produced from your company and your workers.
when I designed the company, I never knew that I was going to have a staff. So all the 6 services are things that I can personally do and I keep up with. But I'll tell you, one of the advantages of bringing in other people is they have other experience
Yeah.
levels. So the SOPs over time have changed and improved because, I don't care if they're first year, they've been doing it for 20 years. People have different experiences and they bring that in. And as long as you can get them to catch the vision of what we're trying to do. And really, it's
Hmm.
pretty simple. When people say, "What is Bowman Digital doing?" and what are you guys doing? I'm like, it's simple. We want to increase the visibility of our clients online so that they're reaching more of their target audience. That's it.
That's
Now we
pretty
do it
basic.
in
Yeah.
6 different ways, but
Right.
that's our goal. So when you're bringing people in and you're explaining to them the culture and how things work, and you tell them what we're trying to do, I don't micromanage. I can't stand being micromanaged, so I don't
Yeah.
micromanage others. But I give them the freedom to fail. This is one thing, again, if you're a business owner and you're out there like need help on strategy, don't come down with a hammer if they make a mistake, because actually what you learn from that mistake can be
Hmm.
way more valuable than if they had actually been successful with that original failed attempt. So
Yeah.
I have learned that. And because my team knows they have some rope and they don't have to worry about getting fired or chewed out for the mistake, it's just like, okay, all I ask them to do is if we're testing something, first run it by me to make sure that it's okay. And
Hmm.
then how are we going to monitor the progress? How are we going to evaluate if it was a success or not? And then when do we say at a certain point, okay, we've got to switch course because it's not
Right.
working. We can't let it go forever. Like, oh, if I only pour an extra $1 million into this, I know I can make it work. Like, there's got to be a threshold at which you bail out on something you're trying that's new.
Yeah. Well, that to me explains why you've been as successful as you have, because having that type of mindset and understanding the proper way to lead, especially people who are creative. Like I'm sure in your team they're so creative, and to recognize that this is how you put them in positions to succeed versus
Yeah.
like you all have to be just like me.
No, I don't want them to be. I don't want them to be clones of me. But I will tell you one thing that I have found, especially with creatives. Sometimes it's like herding cats
Yeah, yeah, of course.
because you get somebody and you're interviewing them and you look at their profile and or their portfolio and they
Hmm.
do amazing things. And I'm like, have you ever been paid by somebody to do any artwork yet? And the ones that say no are the ones I'm nervous about. And here's why. It's different when you're doing it because you love it and you get to do
Yeah,
whatever it is that inspires you at that moment. What we do is so different because we're working with corporations and
yeah.
brands and their campaigns. They might be something that they think is a wonderful idea and you're like, I hate it. I'll give you an example one, and I'm not going to tell you the name of the company, but they came to me with this idea. Concept was purple light bulb with yellow illuminating lines, and we were going to make that. Their colors had to be purple and yellow, and we had to make it in their expression like someone drew it with a crayon.
Hmm.
And I was like, this is not going to look good. I tried to talk them out of it in the consult. I tried to give them some concepts that I thought would be better. But at the end of the day, that's what the client ordered. That's what we delivered. So if you have an artist who's like, ew, I can't do
Yeah,
something that I know looks bad, like you're in the wrong profession then. Keep
yeah.
that as your hobby. Don't make that your career. Because as soon as you make it your career or your
It's gonna
profession,
suck the soul out of you. Yeah,
yeah, but what makes the client happy in most cases is what you have to deliver.
yeah.
Now, if they're asking me to do something immoral or illegal, of course, I'm not going to do that. Or something that I know
Hmm.
is going to harm them. For example, with SEO, sometimes people want to do some things. Google calls it white hat and black hat. White hat methods are Google approved. Black hat methods are not Google approved. In fact, if you get caught with those, you can get delisted, which you
Mm.
definitely don't want to do that and get caught. So we don't do anything that's black hat, right? So if somebody asks me to do a technique that's black hat, they might not even know it's black hat, right? They just
Mm.
think, I got a friend who's doing this and they're
Yeah.
getting all this extra traffic. I'm like, yeah, but they're cheating. And if they get caught, they're done. They've got to
Yeah.
create a whole new website, whole new server to get back online. I don't want that liability, so we won't do it.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if the clients ask me to do it, we will, and we're going to try to make them happy, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the goal. So whether I think the
Yeah.
artwork is beautiful or ugly is kind of irrelevant, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing with some of these creative kids when we get them out of school, or, they've been painting on the side for themselves for a hobby for a long time, and they decide they want to try their hand in the professional realm. And it's like, okay, well, I just have to ask you about your mindset. I have to understand, will you create me something that is not good?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a challenge.
But it's really great that you have this perspective and you have this intention, because I think that's what's gonna make sure that the right people are in the right places and that you are with the right people that fit your
Yeah.
clientele and stuff.
No,
So
100%,
yeah,
right? The
that's
client's got to
awesome.
fit the team members. I don't call them employees, but I call them team members. They're part of our team.
Mhm.
They also have to fit. And so I actually instituted an internship program, an apprenticeship program, if you will, but it's like a college course. They go through it for 90 days. And if they make it to the end and I'm interested and they're interested, then I bring them on board. If not, I
Mm.
write them a letter of recommendation. I give them a certificate of completion, and they go find a job at a place that'll be a better fit. But that has helped me weed out. I used to hire some people, and the best thing about them was their interview. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So that helped me eliminate that. But also, it's kind of funny, as a side note, I was able to create a course out of that for an LMS. So somebody could actually buy that course without running through the internship or apprenticeship program, and that one they have to pay for. Obviously, the other one is
Right.
they're volunteering, so they're not paying. It's kind of a trade. They help us
Hmm.
out for a certain amount of time, and we give them the training for free. But at the end of it, there's a job possible.
Possibly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of them do it. But it's great for those people who have been out of work for a while and they need a stopgap, or it is something like, hey, this is something I think I want to do, but I'm not sure. It's like, well, come try it out for 10 weeks. Let's see if you like it.
Hmm.
So anyways, those are some of the
That's
creative
cool.
solutions that we've come up with along the way to help with those challenges.
Any of your 8 kids have any interest in jumping on board or taking over the business from you
Yeah.
eventually?
Yeah. In a variety of
Yeah,
ways. Actually, my oldest daughter is 20, and she has been working for me for 3 years. So
that's so
she's
cool.
going to school right now for a marketing degree in Florida. But when she's here in the summer and the winter, she works for me. Not full time. She's still a kid. You know what I mean? So she still likes to have a little fun. But she's working like 25 hours a week for me. And then when she's in school, she'll do like 10 to 15 hours a week.
How's that experience been for you? Is it fulfilling or is it more stress than you would prefer?
Um, my daughter is a lot like me. So
Okay.
in some ways, it's really good. In
Hmm.
other ways, it's like, dang.
Yeah.
And I know right where it comes from. Like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? But I'm really proud of her. She's come a long ways with her career, and she knows, she's learning a lot in school too. But she's able to grasp some of the things in school. It's interesting because sometimes they'll teach her something counter to what I've taught her, and
Hmm.
then she'll come home and we debate it. I'm like, yeah, well, this is why I don't agree with the professor who's never actually done it for a living, right? Like,
Yeah, that's
there
a
is
very
some of
big.
that
Yeah.
vacuum and textbook stuff that it doesn't work in the real world. For Well, I don't want to get into for examples, but anyways, we have these issues sometimes. But another daughter of mine has fallen in love with photography, and so she comes out and assists me sometimes on shoots, which is
That's
wonderful.
cool.
So my second oldest son is 19. He's in school. He's a software engineering major and a theater major, so he's double majoring.
Wow.
But he has no interest in working for me. So some of them do, and some of them don't, and I'm totally fine with it. Like, my thought as a dad is I need to prepare them for life,
Yep.
and so that they can be a fully contributing member of society. I'm not judging their dreams. I'm just trying to help them accomplish their dreams and figure out like life is real. Like, for example, earlier today, I went out and I shut everything off in my house. I'm like, you kids need to get up and get this laundry done because we're going to Las Vegas tomorrow. And if you don't have laundry, we're not going. right? So,
Yeah.
you know, like dad's job is not to do everything for them, but to make sure that they know how to do it and have everything they need to be successful in life, right? That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah.
But I don't care what their dreams are per se, as much as I care about helping them figure
Hmm.
out a way to make them real.
Well, you got 8 dreams to help prepare for. So
Yeah, and then my wife,
good
right?
luck.
Like I'm trying to make her dreams come true too. So, for me, that's been like the dad responsibility is not just providing financially, but also trying to
Yeah.
provide whatever access they need, the safety that they need to be creative in their own
Mm.
way. And I don't want them to grow up and feel like, oh, dad was just trying to make me be a miniature him. Like,
Right. Right. Yeah.
yeah, I just want them to be happy, healthy,
And
successful. That's it.
I'm sure your family will agree that one of you is enough, right? No need
Oh,
another
yeah.
you.
And what's funny is, so the 8 kids, my sixth child was born on my birthday.
Oh no.
So I have an Ira Jr. And I will tell you, and everyone will tell you, he is just like me in every way. Like this kid couldn't be more like me. So he's 12 now. And
Oh boy.
yeah, watch out, world, because
Yeah.
one Ira was certainly enough, but there is two of them. In fact, that little dude, he stole my name, he stole my birthday. He's a mama's boy, so he's always trying to steal my
Oh,
woman. And I'm
yeah.
like, better watch out, buddy.
Better hold on tight to that camera. I might take that too.
Well, I'm all of 5'7". You and I have met. You know I'm not very tall. This kid is in love with the NBA. Like he's obsessed with the NBA. So he walks around. Steph Curry is his favorite player, and he also likes Giannis. I can't say
Yeah.
Antetokounmpo. I
Yeah.
can't say that correctly, but that guy in Milwaukee. He loves that guy too. And then we're Lakers fans, so he also roots for LeBron James and the Lakers. Well, this kid, his 5'2", in the 7th grade. He wants to be on the basketball team. And I'm like, you better learn how to play with your left hand really, really well, because he's right-handed, right? So I'm like, if you can play with both hands, you've got a shot as a guard if you can dribble well, pass well, and shoot well
Hmm.
with both hands. I can't say that word either. Dyslexia, full disclosure. I have trouble saying big words, but ambidextrous, or however you say that.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
I told him that's your only shot because you're not going to be 7 foot tall. Right. So now my 20-year-old son is 6 foot. He's almost 6'1". I didn't tell you my wife is tall, so that's helpful.
So
Right.
maybe
So
there's a chance, like you might
there's a
have a
side,
huge growth
but
spurt, right?
but I'm like, yeah, if you can get up in that 6 foot range and you're really good with both hands, you've got a shot. But that's his
Yeah.
dream right now. His dream is not being Bowman Digital Media, but he is obsessed with TikTok too. They love
Oh.
TikTok and YouTube videos, so he's got the social media bug. To answer your question earlier,
Yeah.
I do have rules for the kids on social media, but um, we let them start using it at 12, and then
Hmm.
we monitor what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think social media is necessarily a place for kids. In fact, there's a lot of research coming out that supports that now.
Right.
But certainly like any of my kids, I don't care, even my 20-year-old, I'll grab her phone, I'll grab her laptop. I want to see what they're doing. Like, you know what I mean? Like this is safety.
Mm.
So, and I see the dark side of social media a lot. A lot of people
Right.
don't understand that, but there are so many scammers out there and catfishers and all that stuff trying to prey
Yeah.
on the weak. So it's like I need to make sure my kids understand what's going on out there. So my wife and I, we do keep an eye on them. They don't always know we're watching them
Yeah.
neither.
That's good.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I'm a,
Well, off air, I'll have to get some tips from you on how to do some of those things.
yeah. Well,
But
I'll tell you one thing, one easy thing for all parents out there. If your kids are on a social media channel, friend them and make sure you're using that channel too. Like they
mm,
might be on TikTok and you might hate TikTok, but you know what? You need to spend a little bit of time going on TikTok and looking at what content they make and who's
hmm,
commenting, who's engaging with them, right? And then when you pick up the phone, check their DMs, check those messages, because that's the thing that you don't see on their profile. Who's sending them what
right,
messages,
right,
right? Why are they engaging with somebody that maybe they shouldn't? But if you don't know, then you don't know. So
right.
make it your job to know.
Ooh, I was just about to say that sounds like a full-time job, but it is.
Have a system. Put it in your calendar. I live off a block schedule. Everybody always asks me, how do you get so much stuff done? We haven't even talked
Hmm.
about all the walking I do. I walk 25,000 steps a day.
Holy smokes.
So like, how do I do that? Well, it's in my schedule. So just put it like you put lunch in your schedule, right? Put
Hmm.
15-minute block and just put in there, hey, like go check on my kids' social media profiles. What's happening? And then grab their phone before
Yeah.
dinner. Okay, who did you message all day long? I'm going to go through your text. I'm going to go through your phone calls. I'm going to go through your DMs. And I don't care if you like it or not, because my job isn't to be your friend. First is to be your parent.
Hmm.
And part of that is protector.
Man, spoke. I feel like I'm at church. I just want to
Yeah,
be like,
you can do
"Amen,
the
Ira."
Oh, good. Yep. I don't mind. I go to church
Awesome.
too, so I love it.
Well, this has been awesome. I'm so glad we've got to do this,
Yeah.
I'm excited to continue to follow all of the different things that you're doing. For people who are listening that want to learn more about you, want to check out your TED Talks or get your books or all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
give me all of the ways we can get to know you and connect with you.
Well, I'm pretty easy. If you Google my name, stuff comes up. But it's kind of funny. There's a guy out there who used to be in the NBA. His name is Ira Bowman. So
Yes.
if you Google Ira Bowman, half of what you're going to see is going to be me, and I'll be the short, bald, white guy. And then there's this big, beautiful black man who is like 6'5", and
That is not you.
that's the other guy, right? That's
Yeah,
not my
yeah.
that's not Junior. That's the other guy.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
he's the coach for Auburn Tigers in college, right?
Ah,
So,
okay.
anyways, he still gets pressed. But if you want to find me, the easiest thing to do is go to bowmandigitalmedia.com and then
Okay.
go to my media kit, which it's in the menu. So if you go to
Hmm.
bowmandigitalmedia.com, then in the menu, the drop down that says media kit, just click on that. That'll take you to all my socials. It'll show you some of my
Mm.
photos. You can see my books. You can watch my TED Talks right there. You can even see the photos that I was talking about that are in Forbes. And if you click on the photo, it'll actually take you to the Forbes article. We call that social proof. It's like you make a claim, and then you want to be able
Yeah,
to
yeah,
validate it. So it's like, don't tell people you've been in Forbes if you haven't really, right? And what was
yeah.
neat about that is that it didn't cost me anything. I was just doing my job. I did these photos. Now they're not, in full disclosure, my best photos ever. They're event photos, but they're the ones that they picked. I didn't, they didn't call me and say, "Hey, Ira, we want to use your photos." They just used them. But they did give me photo credit, which is very nice. They left my logo on there so that the whole world knows I took the
Oh,
photos.
that's so cool.
Yeah, so I was appreciative of that. But yeah. So
Well,
it's
that's
that,
awesome.
but I'm also on Instagram, I'm on
Hmm.
Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube. If you search my name on any of those platforms, I'm the first Ira Bowman that comes up on any of them. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
your name is so unique that it'll be virtually impossible for people to confuse you with any other Ira Bowmans because the only other one is not you, obviously.
yeah. When you look at the photo, it becomes very clear who it is. Right?
Yeah. Well, I'm really stoked that I got to know this Ira Bowman, and
Yeah,
I'm so glad that we got to reconnect. And whether it's that we reconnect again here in Hawaii at another event, or if there's something else in the future, I look forward to it. But I'm hopeful that we'll stay connected and
I think we will.
continue to
Yeah,
be in each other's lives.
yeah, for sure. You're a talented person in your own right. I could easily see us collaborating on a project for sure.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
Well, until then, Ira, thanks so much for hanging out with me, and we'll be in touch.
yeah. Thanks everybody. Thanks for having me, Nolan. I appreciate it.